when I first started to write notes for what I was going to talk about, and first started practicing it, I noticed that I had about 10 presentations in one, and freaked out, because this was a week ago, and almost called Danielle to call it quits because my anxiety was through the roof. Almost like it is right now. And so, instead of wrestle with all that material I had, which was kind of intellectual, I wanted to get basic here and just talk about something elemental. And I asked myself, what did I want when I was first sitting with clients? What do I wish that I had more of? And I wish that my supervisors reminded me a lot that it wasn't necessary to be perfect, that what my clients would be looking for was not a perfect therapist, and that I didn't need to be any more than who I was or what I was in any given moment, okay? That I didn't need to be solid in some theory, I didn't need to be making interesting interpretations or being more of anything, but what was most important was that I be all of myself, was that I bring all of myself to my work, into my sessions, into my life. And that being a good therapist wasn't about being like smarter or more experienced, but it was just about being real. And why does this matter? It matters because if you can come into your session, even as a beginner, and be real with the person, your client's going to feel that, and she's going to have something to rest in, and she's going to trust you a lot more easily than if you're trying to be perfect. I wish I had been able to trust that I was enough, even when things weren't going so well in the room, in my work, that it was okay to be myself, and then I had honored how hard I had tried and how much I'd grown since the first day I thought about being a therapist. And I wish I'd more fully accepted my place as a beginner and all the vulnerability and the humility and the openness that has to come with that. And that it's a good thing. And kept in mind that it was safe and okay, and sometimes even necessary, not to know where to go or what to do with your clients. That being in the unknowingness is okay, and that if you come from a place of authority, and if you believe that, I need to know the answers, I need to know where to go in this session, I need to know where to lead, that you end up closing doors down instead of keeping them open. But I was a beginner, and I thought that I needed to be a step ahead of myself, really, of my clients, including myself. And between sessions, I would scramble to write a note on the client I'd just seen. I'd look back at my notes from my past session with my supervisor and try to remember everything I could about the person who was just about to come in. I would try to meditate for a minute or two. I would try to get a bite to eat, all within the space of about 7 or 8 minutes. And instead of being more prepared like I was trying to be, I was actually going into my sessions pretty anxious. And I think that pushing myself so hard, I lost myself in trying to be a lot more than I was. And my clients, I imagine, could feel this and could feel left by me at times, missed by me. So this quality of being present and available in whatever you're in with your client, whether you know or you don't know what's going on, that being in this unnameable place together, this is what matters. That if you can be flexible, if you can come from a place of humility, if you can show your vulnerability at times, that these are your gifts, and this is what your people are going to feel. And they're going to be able to rest and trust in this because they're going to be able to feel you. How's this landing?
Like truth.
So, I'm still nervous. Even if you don't always have this in mind, that it's okay to be right where I am. But if you have it in mind, maybe once per session, or once every other session, or once a week, or once a month, or just once in a while, and start to get used to that everything that's led up to this point has created who I am, and it's really enough. I don't have to be ahead of myself. If you can keep it in mind now and then, your client's going to feel it, and you're going to get to the point where you can feel your client feeling it, and he or she is going to know you're feeling it. And this is the priceless moment in therapy, in the clinical relationship, to me anyway. And it's what's transformative. And it's not just transformative for your client, but it's transformative for you too. Because you both have come together. Your client has found you, you've found her. Somehow you've both come together to know something more about yourselves. And you each want deeper connection, which is probably why you're doing this work. And this is where you can get it. Just by being you. Does anyone have questions at this point, or comments? I'm not going to save all the questions till the end. You're welcome to ask away.
How long have you been practicing?
5 years. Well, licensed 5 years. I started in 2001. Let me save more generalized questions to the end. I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was just curious how far along we'll be when we start to realize what we wish we had known when we were starting.
Oh. Well, here's part of it.
Yeah.
When I first started, I considered myself a relational therapist, and I'd done some training with Diana Fosha. I'd seen the Carl Rogers tapes and really admired the way they put themselves into their work. And I thought I was doing it, and at least in my words I was. But there was something that didn't feel quite right about it. Like I could hear myself saying the words, I would hear myself saying, "What's it like for you to be saying that to me right now?" And the words would kind of tumble out of my mouth, but there was some anxiety behind it, and so it didn't feel too congruent with me. It felt kind of like a tool. And part of me would think, okay, that was the right thing to say right then. And then another more critical part of me would say, she doesn't care what it's like for you to be talking to her, for her to be talking to you right now. You could be anybody. And I was in a place where I had limited value because I didn't think I'd gone to enough trainings, or I didn't have enough time under my belt of being an intern, or I hadn't read enough journal articles, or I hadn't read enough books, or I hadn't given a training. I thought once I had done all these things, then I could finally and more confidently bring myself into the relationship. So this took time. It took time for me to realize that, no, actually, what's happening between my client and me, this relationship, this thing here, I'm a big part of it, and I count. I count to my client. And I wish my supervisors, and I had great ones, I wish they'd reminded me a little bit more and held this in mind. You know, that clients are going to come and go, they're going to do their thing, they're going to leave therapy no matter what you try to do or say to keep them there. And that flux is built into this profession. You're gonna have times when your phone's ringing and you feel so good because people want you, and then there'll be other times where you're losing clients one by one and you're thinking, what's wrong with me? And this is part of the nature of the work. It's about newness and loss at the same time, and sometime within a few moments of each other. And this is common with many of the supervisees I've seen. They just don't realize their impact on their clients. They're not realizing inside that my presence here has value. They know that the therapists that they've seen, that they've gone to, have had tremendous impact on them. But for some reason, and I know why, because I've been through it, they can't turn it around and say, wow, this person really feels like I'm a major player in their life. Even when I don't know the answer, or when my client and I are having difficulty with each other, when I don't feel like my client's liking me, or when my client's hating me, or when I'm hating my client, when we're hating each other, that this is valuable too, because maybe nobody else in that client's life has sat with her or him and held a space for this person to be in their grief or their rage or their intense joy, and just been able to sit there with them. And when you consider that, it's amazing what we do and what we have to offer. So once you begin to get this, and once you begin to feel it and embody it, you can more comfortably and confidently say, how is it for you to be with me right now? Or if your client is out there, he's left the room, he's dissociating, just to say, it looks like you've left the room. I want you to come back and be with me. I'm not going anywhere. I'm right here. Or simply, can you feel me with you? Can you feel me here? Are you getting this? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Any questions?
I'm curious. I really appreciate you talking about the being real.
Yeah.
And I remember, especially from really in the beginning, from practicum, that seemed really hard and seemed like really, really far away.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if when you work with supervisees, like how you help them to become real.
I'll give an example that comes right to mind. One of my supervisees told me last week that her client was leaving the therapy or taking a break, I can't remember which one it was, and that she could kind of get it, and she told her client, I want to honor that. And I said, but it sounds like you don't really feel good about her leaving the therapy. And she said, no, I don't think she should leave. And I just told her, you don't have to honor that. You can tell her why you think she should stay. And she said, well, I thought that we need to honor whatever our clients want. And I said, well, that's what they want you to do, but you don't have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The sigh is because I'm intensely nervous here still. I want to talk about just one case example among many that I regret. And it was when a new colleague of mine referred me a young man, and my colleague had been seeing him in couples therapy, and he thought that we would be a good match. So I made contact with him on the phone and heard what he had to say, And I thought, this is amazing. I've done so much work in this area for years. In fact, I was still in the work. And so I thought that this guy and I were really going to click, and I couldn't wait to get into it. And I started, I think even before the session, I started to sort of formulate the direction that we would go in together. And we met, and he was new to this kind of therapy. He had just started couples, so he was new to individual. And I was very conscious about wanting him to like the therapy and wanting him to like me. And I ran way ahead of myself. And I found myself sort of guiding him and encouraging him. And at the end of the session, I even gave him some homework to speed things along. And this is the first session. And I thought it went pretty well. And I hoped it had, because I wanted more clients from this colleague. And I wanted to tell him that things had gone well. And then a few days later, I got a text message from him saying, I need to cancel all future sessions with you. And I got in touch with him, and he said he just wasn't ready for therapy at this time in his life. If I'd really been behind myself, I would have probably tried to get him to come in more. I asked him to come back, but he wouldn't. And the shame I felt was like a hot knife. And I thought, what did I do to drive him away so fast? I think I went so fast, I left him behind 5 or 10 minutes into that first session. Because I didn't think that it was going to be enough for me to be just who I was. And I don't think I ever checked in with him once about what my impact was on him, or how he was doing in the session, or if we were going too fast or too slow, or how he was doing with me in general. And I imagine he felt overwhelmed and misunderstood and left behind. And it was exactly the opposite of what I attended with this guy. Yeah.
Was that a case of, do you think, and recalling it, of were you putting too much out to him, kind of trying to win him over, as opposed to just being there, in that sense of really wanting to feel validated and have him come back and be happy so that you could tell your colleague good things?
Telling my colleague good things was in the back of my mind. And I wanted him to buy into the therapy, as if that was necessary. And I also put too much of my own experience into it too.
So do you think you were trying to sell him, in quotes?
I was trying to do a good job, instead of trying to just be a therapist with him. So, yeah, I think there was a degree of salesmanship in there. I also don't think I did that bad of a job. I probably scared him, and he was a little emotionally bruised as he left, or a lot, and it was too much for him.
Scared him by what you said?
Scared him by what I thought I saw going on between he and his wife and his mother. And
Interpretation?
It was laying too much on him too fast.
Okay.
Yeah. So with this example, I'd forgotten something essential, and that's that this colleague, he didn't refer to me because he thought I was a great therapist. He was friends with Michael Klein. He knew many great therapists and many seasoned pros. In fact, he didn't even know how I worked. He didn't know how I worked individually. But he liked me, I think, because of my open insecurity about being a new therapist. And my vulnerability in not knowing all the answers. And my discomfort, and yet my openness to being lost. And to talking with him about what if I lose all my clients, and what am I going to do with my life, and will I have to go back to social work or waiting tables? Like, I was a mess. And he liked this. He didn't need me to be perfect to refer to me. And I think if I trusted in the quality of my presence and told myself that I was enough here, I would have allowed more space for this man to start finding his own voice, and that's what he needed. He didn't need me to be having a voice for him. And sometimes you're going to get clients who, they have a feeling like they need therapy, but they can't find it inside yet about what's happening. They can't talk about it yet. And so your work for maybe up to a year is going to be helping a person find his or her voice. And that's where the work starts. Any questions or comments?
Do you help them find their voice by asking them, like if they were to ask sort of your advice, or if they were to put something out there where they wanted an answer from you, are they finding their voice by you reflecting it back to them? How do you feel, or what do you think is the right answer?
I do reflect it back to them. I try not to. We're all going to give advice sometimes. It's difficult not to, but that's not really what we're supposed to do. And it's not effective anyway. Their friends have given them advice and it hasn't been enough, and so here they are. Sometimes I don't know what the answer is. And I'll tell them, right now, as we're sitting with it, I just don't know. But I have a feeling that we can find it together, that we can work it out, that we can sort through some of this, and I bet you'll come up with your answer.
And that's where their voice starts to emerge.
Sometimes them just knowing that it's okay not to know. Yeah. So, I want to talk a little bit about ambivalent clients. And these are the ones who, well, there are many types, but some of them, you're going to see some people and they're going to say that they would like to cut down their therapy to once every other week, or once a month, or can I come in 2 times and then skip 2 times, and that sort of thing. And they're going to give you a variety of reasons, like they can't afford it, or one of my interns told me that one of her clients is too activated outside of the sessions. That she acts out with her friends, and she doesn't like the way she's feeling after therapy, so she'd like less of it. Or they're going to say, I want some more time for myself. I need more time for yoga, or I need more social time. I need more time with other people. This is too much time focused on me. And it's going to sound good. It's going to make sense. But if you hold on to yourself and really listen, you can hear that when they say that they can't afford it, what they're saying is, I'm not used to spending so much time on myself. Or I'm not used to spending money on myself. Even if it's $30 a session, it's going to feel expensive to them. Or you're going to hear that they're too activated in the world outside of your sessions, not because the therapy is too much, but because they need more. So maybe they need to come in twice a week. Or that being in a place of need while fearing they're going to be left is intolerable to them. They might need more support. They might need to feel more of you in the room. They might need to feel more of who you are. And I'm not talking about revealing facts about your life or if you're married or not, but just feeling your curiosity and your openness. This is what they want. Right? And then you're going to have clients, and I have this still, and I'm sure I always will, who want to suddenly stop the therapy. And again, they're going to give you a lot of reasons, like I just don't have time for it anymore. Therapy is a burden in my life. I don't have time, I don't have the energy. Or they're going to say, I want to see what it's like out there on my own. I want to know what it's like to rely on myself. I can't be codependent, they'll say. Or, I can't afford to see you forever. This is going to have to end at some time. And so they're thinking you might as well end now. And you know that there's a lot more work to be done. And so it's going to be easy to say, again, okay, you know, I hear what you're saying. I kind of think there's some more work to be done, but I want to honor your decision. And you have my number, feel free to check in, and then they're out the door. And you're going to end up fulfilling their projection that they're not worth it to you. And they'll leave you before they give you the chance to leave them. Some of this is out of your control totally, and some of it has to do with how you're holding your value as a therapist. And when you can start to come from that place instead, you can start to feel like, okay, there's something happening between us, and I'm enough here. When you hear somebody say that therapy is a burden to me, what they might be saying is, I feel like I'm a burden to you. Or, I'm a burden to people in my life, and I can't stand it, so I need to get out of here. Or the reason you sit with me is because I pay you. How else could you tolerate me? How could you tolerate what I go through and my dark side and my ugly side?
What do you think when someone says to you, I don't feel like I'm getting anything out of this?
No one's ever said that to me. I'm kidding. So what do I say?
I mean, it sort of sounds like, well, I'm paying for this and I'm not getting anything out of it.
Yeah.
Sort of like
I've heard it many times.
Yeah. What would they be saying? What would you think they really are saying to you?
Well, I'm not sure. But I would ask, what is it that you're hoping to get that you're not getting? And I'd probably have a feeling that they're not getting something, and I'd say, you know, I'm not surprised you're saying this, because something is kind of stopped in here, something's dead. There's something that isn't happening, and I'm wondering if you have a sense of what that is, of what you're needing. How does that sound?
Sounds great.
And how do you know? And how do you know how to say exactly that in that moment? That's
the bigger part, right?
That's the part that I noticed for myself.
Well, I didn't at first, and I would, if somebody said that to me, I would think, great. I'm not doing my job here. I'm not good enough. But I don't really believe that anymore. And when somebody's saying I'm not getting anything out of this, then it's okay to put it back on them and say, what would you like to get out of this? What are you needing from me? Because I think I know some things that you need, but I don't know everything that you need. So let's lay it out. What is it? You know? And sometimes when people want to leave, I'll say, you know, we've done a lot of work together, and given what you're working on, I just don't know how you're going to make it out there on your own. And I don't want to see you out there on your own. I want you to stay. Or you've tried this on your own, and you and I both know it hasn't worked. Or you and I both know that you have a history of neglecting yourself. So what's going to be different when you get out there this time? You know, I'm afraid you're going to neglect yourself some more. So maybe there's something more we need to cover in here. And I'm not sure what it is right now, but I think if we put our heads together, we can maybe figure it out. So I think, to answer your question, Danielle, of how do you come up with stuff like that, it takes some time, and I think to the degree that you can value yourself, even when you're just starting out, even when you're in your first week of practicum, or you see your first clients, if you can consider that what I'm offering this person, they're not getting anywhere else. That's a lot. It's a lot. That's all I have. But I'm open to questions, and I'm open to more general questions too.
Were you aware of the progress of the sense of your value increasing over time as a new therapist, and kind of having that sense of self-esteem get a little more grounded and stronger?
Yes.
Could you feel it kind of happening along
Yes.
the way?
Yes. I feel it. But even when you don't feel it, give yourself time to feel it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm sorry I came in a little late. I work in the Richmond and I got off at 5:30. I'm wondering what I missed, if there's maybe just a brief, someone could just brief me really quickly.
It's also on video,
Oh,
which is
great.
going to be uploaded, so you can go back and watch the beginning of that as well.
Okay, I just don't know what to ask since,
Okay.
yeah.
Do you want to? I don't.
It's kind of tough for me to give a summary, but watch the tape, and it's about how to feel like you're enough, even when you're not feeling like you're enough. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Or why it's okay to feel like enough, even when you think you're supposed to be perfect. Yes. Yeah.
When you were first starting out, you were talking about like your time between seeing clients and
Yes.
trying to
Yeah.
collect yourself in 7 or 8 minutes and
Yeah.
eat and remember everything. Like, how did you, like, if your today self, go back to yourself back then, like, what would you tell yourself how to utilize that time in between clients to kind of, I guess, feel less anxious going in? I think that's one of the things I'm kind of freaked out about.
I would tell myself to do whatever I want in between those sessions. That I didn't need to write a note. It's helpful to look at notes sometimes, but for me it isn't critical. And sometimes I just want to have a few bites of my sandwich or text somebody, okay? Or return a phone call, you know? Whatever brings you back to yourself, because you're gonna sit with a lot of energy with that person, and you're gonna need some time. And I'm just now trying to work it so I have 20 minutes between sessions rather than the standard 10, which doesn't really make sense to me. But you're gonna need time to come back to yourself and be ready for the next person. So do what feels good. What else? Yeah.
Just sitting here and wondering to myself, it's a really big wondering, in the unknown of this, like where can we look towards for signposts along the way that we're getting ready to move into the next phase of being a therapist. One of the thoughts that comes to mind is where I've been placed to help relieve that initial anxiety, and it's a very, very nice offering. The director and manager say, what we really want from you, the only thing we really need from you is that you walk into your first sessions hopefully a little less anxious than your clients are. And you don't have to do anything else but breathe.
That's great.
It is great. It's a great relief in a sense, but of course very quickly we're moving. I want to be careful about how quickly I say quickly because I'm trying to be very, very cautious with myself about how fast I move. Those kind of things that you're referring to in the beginning. And I am really very, very, very much paying attention to, developing skills with reflection and summary and staying with the listening phase of it. But eventually it's going to become, there are fellow trainees who are jumping into some modes of intervention with clients. I'd say I just started a month ago, so I'm sitting with my first clients now.
Cool.
So, what are the signposts along the way that we can look to that say, okay, well, maybe we can start to look to some of this ACT or CBT or body-based work or move to the next step.
You probably know when it feels like a little bit of a push, but you're not overextending yourself. When something feels new and a little bit risky, and you're putting it out there, you're putting yourself out there, but it still feels like you're attached to it. Like it's not something you learned or saw somebody do in class and it looked terrific, so you're trying it on for size, but it's something that comes from your heart. That you've listened to this person and listened carefully for a long time, and you have a good sense of them, which is what you need first. And once you have a good sense, then you can come in with yourself. And you're going to make mistakes. You're going to say things that flop. And you can ask the person, how are you doing with this? Or with what I just said, does that make sense? Does it hit somewhere in you? Because there's kind of a deadness, and I can't tell if it even landed in you at all.
I will certainly do it.
And just check it out.
The check-ins, for example, really do make sense. That's something that's critical all along the way, it seems.
All along
But
the way.
then, what I'm hearing from you in terms of the signposts, the question is, our own comfort level with what it is we might be considering attempt.
Yeah. And you'll see, you'll have a good sense of when you can start to say more, or when you can try more, or when your client is open to something newer. Or you won't have a sense and you'll try it anyway, and it'll either work or it won't work. But the people that will be coming to see you aren't fragile. They're not going to snap into if you make a mistake. They're not going to leave because you said one thing that rubbed them the wrong way, although they might. I don't think they will. They're not as fragile as we treat them. Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes?
If you wanted to introduce some kind of embodied thing that you think would help in the moment for something they're talking about, what's a good way to go about doing that so it doesn't sound like it just came randomly out of the blue? like a,
I'm not quite sure what you're asking.
well, like for example, somebody talks about how, oh, I don't know how to be assertive. I'm either assertive or aggressive, or I'm either passive or aggressive, and I don't know how to be in the middle. And like, you wanted to maybe help them embody what they thought assertiveness looked like, but you wanted to sort of tell them, you wanted to introduce that without it just suddenly going to the next chapter with, you know what I mean? Like, do you understand what I'm asking?
Sort of. I would want to know more about what they're saying when they mean they're too assertive at times. I'd want to know what they mean when they're saying I'm too passive at times. I would have lots of questions to ask about all of that.
To ask about really the particulars, the details of the nature of their experience first.
Or what she thinks assertive means, or what he thinks passivity means to him. Like what he considers passive might not be that passive. Or what's assertive might be overbearing, or might not be assertive at all. So you'd have to find out. It's not necessary to answer the question, but maybe to open it up for further questioning. But you will feel pulled to answer the question.
Okay, but like let's say that you thought it would be appropriate to use some kind of embodied thing, some
Like
kind
what
of somatic exercise, like if you felt it would benefit them, what would be the least awkward way to ask them about it? Is what? Like saying that you did that and thought they'd still benefit from some kind of a somatic exercise.
Well, I don't really give somatic exercises.
Oh, you
in
don't
my
do
work. I don't do
somatics?
somatic stuff, no. I mean, I
Okay.
do some breathing. I do breathing and grounding, but I don't really work that somatically.
Okay,
Sorry.
it's okay.
How, just to follow up on that, how would you introduce like a breathing? Is it an exercise, or like in regards to breathing?
Sometimes, often if I notice somebody's really anxious and I can see that they're only breathing to here, I'll simply ask them to put their feet on the ground and put their hand on their belly and see if they can feel themselves fully breathe and fully exhale. And I have had many people who suffer from panic attacks and yogic breathing. If you've done yogic breathing and if you've done pranayama and you've inhaled slowly and counted and then held and exhaled slowly and then held at the bottom and then come back, it's amazing what that can do just in a couple minutes. So that's one thing that I do.
I'm wondering, like when you walk away from a session and you're still thinking about the session and what's going on with the client, what was going on with the client, and you have new insights and you discover, wow, there's actually much more feeling than what was being reflected or being, you discover, well, this comes to you. What do you do with that? Do you just put it in the back of your mind and bookmark that because, I mean, one of the things that they tell us is that we go where the client wants to go. So what do you do with that those new insights or those new thoughts?
If it's a good one, I write it down.
Yeah.
If I want to remember it, I write it down. And I'll write it down but I might not bring it into the next session. And I might not bring it into the next one. I do let the person come in and start where they are. But I will keep that in mind. Oh yeah, this was big and I missed it and I want to keep this in mind. And then when I have a chance, I'll bring it in or I'll create a chance, which is kind of cheating. You know what I mean? But if I think it's central, I'll create that chance. And sometimes I'll think it's something that we need to get to, and I'll be holding on to it in the session. I'll think, we got to get to this, and I'll think, we don't have to get to this. And maybe we won't. And I'll let go of it. But then I'll have a chance and I'll come back and it'll be there. Or it won't. It's a good question, though. It happens all the time. Yes?
Can you maybe give an example of how you would transition from the client giving you the details of the story, and then she said, and then he said, and without my fear is that I'm interrupting, or that I'm trying to make them go away, that they're not ready to go. But I'm wondering how much time you spend with the actual story and how much time you spend just in the present here and now.
Yeah, another good question. Once in a while, if I think that the content, and this is my judgment call, if I think it's really peripheral and something else is beneath, I'll simply ask, is this really what you want to be telling me right now? Or is there something else underneath that you're feeling that maybe needs to come up? Almost always there will be, but sometimes there won't be. And so I'll have guessed wrong. And even in the most derivative content, if the person's talking about their boss or their friends or their network of friends, they're actually giving you pieces of information about what it's like for them to be in the world. And in fact, what it's like for them to be in contact with you in that moment. So in that regard, nothing is derivative and everything has meaning.
When I first started being a client with a therapist, I never even considered that the here and now was important, or that there was anything happening in the relationship between me and my client. I really think in the beginning it was just me sort of just unpacking stuff. And I'm not sure at that time if somebody were to have asked, if a therapist were to have asked me, do you really want to be telling me this right now? Or, I feel like our clients won't know what we know and how important right now and the feelings we're having right now are. How do you convey them without making them? Well, my fear is that they will feel like I'm spending all this money, and now my therapist wants to talk about us. Now my therapist wants to know how I feel about him, or the impact, or whatever.
Yeah.
But I need to catch him up on all the details so he knows what I'm talking about.
They might be enraged that you want to know about what the us is like for them. And for some clients, there is no sense of other. And that's good information. And you can start to bring that in, because they need to have a sense of other. Am I answering your question?
I think so.
It's not always the best thing to say, is this really what you want to be talking about right now?
Right.
Unless you think they're really over the top and super avoiding something.
Yeah. I just have found I'm a baby in the process, but I
Sure.
have found that the story takes up a lot of time. And I remember when I thought the story was more important.
Yes.
Because I felt if my therapist didn't know the whole story, then how could they possibly help me? Because I was totally, I didn't know that it actually had nothing to do with the story.
And also, maybe you needed somebody to hear the story too.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you needed. So, that was good. And many, especially in counseling, in sliding scale counseling centers, people are not going to be coming in wanting to talk about the clinical relationship.
Right.
So there will be a lot of backstory.
Right.
And you have to be patient. But as I said, you can always listen to what the person could be saying about you and him. You don't even have to bring it in, but you can listen, and you're getting information about this person.
Your question made me think of something else. The idea of, with certain kinds of clients, I don't know if it's somebody really like savvy and like super sharp, or maybe that doesn't mean anything, but the idea of, do you give them insight into the process that you're sort of working with? For example, I heard a woman say the other day something to the effect of, oh, I tried therapy once, but I just sat there for an hour and talked at this person, and they didn't say anything. They didn't give me any advice or anything. And as a student in this process, it's like, oh, that was, you were just getting started. And then that makes me think, do you reveal the process to someone like that? Can that be helpful?
Yes. I think it can be. Because it's weird. Right? Therapy is kind of weird. I mean, after a while, nothing could make more sense. And you wish, maybe, all your interactions could be so genuine and authentic and meaningful. But it's a strange situation. And if I give somebody, I'm a pretty spacious therapist, and if I give somebody too much space, I mean, there's a certain degree that's good, and a certain amount of anxiety that's okay. But if the person's thinking, I don't know what the hell's going on in here, well, how does therapy go? I've never done this. It's fine to answer the question. And that's however you envision your work. And maybe saying that you might talk a lot and you might start to feel better, and then at a certain point you might start to feel a little bit worse, and then you'll even out, or you might have some feelings about me. Who knows? But it's a journey that we go on together. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What else?
I'm curious if you can talk a little about how you do supervision, or what's important for you in supervision with students.
I don't like to tell my supervisees what to say. I don't like to give direct interventions, because those are my words. But I do expect my interns to come in with a degree of vulnerability. I like them to be doing their own work. And I like them to be open, as I've stressed tonight, to not knowing and to figuring out within themselves, and me helping them a lot too, about what is happening in this situation here. Like what's really going on, and how can I be of service to this person in this moment, say in a little piece of tape that they bring. So I do listen to segments of tape with my people, and sometimes it's about 3 minutes, and 3 minutes of the tape, and that takes up the whole session. I think there are two main styles of supervision, and one is more didactic and kind of coming from a place of authority and instructing the supervisee of how to be a therapist, but mine's more of the therapeutic style, where I like the supervisee to bring a lot of themselves into the session and draw from themselves instead of what I suggest that they might say. Although I can't help but do that sometimes, and it happens, you know. And sometimes my supervisees really need that, and so I'm happy to help with that. But I try not to tell them too much. I like to help them find their truth in their own style. Yes?
You ever had a situation where a client came in that had problems that were too severe for your supervisee to work with? Like if they weren't experienced enough yet to work with that person? And how did you deal with it?
It's happened to me in my practice. I haven't had it happen with a supervisee yet. And all of my supervisees they work in a counseling clinic, so they have other supervisors too. And so there's quite a screening process. But it could happen. And it would take a long conversation to find out whether it was true that my supervisor could not help this person, or maybe the person was on the personality disorder scale to such an extent that it probably wasn't a good fit, and then she could refer out. Does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that other supervisees might be more qualified to do it, or do you think we would be referring them out to someone more experienced?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, or maybe a different clinic that specializes in certain populations. Yeah. I've never suggested to a supervisee that he or she refer to someone else within the counseling clinic. Even when they want to, I really encourage them to hold on to the client and work through the impasse, or work through the tough stuff.
How often do the clients give feedback or request a different therapist?
Not often. Doesn't seem like often. Once in a while.
Which location are you at as a supervisor?
I've been at the marina. I've worked with marina people. I've worked with church, Pierce, and currently Golden Gate. And somewhere in Marin too. I can't remember what it's called. But all satellites from CIS, except for the Marina Counseling Center.
Do you find yourself, I'm just going to take it.
Go.
Yes.
Take it.
It's all yours.
Do you find yourself, do you report to someone or have a supervisor that you still check in with and take sort of suggestions or?
I've always had some form of consultation, and right now I'm in a group, which I like. Yeah. Yeah. Once in a while I'll bring something into my own therapy too.
Are you glad that you're a therapist?
I don't know what else I'd be doing. Yeah.
Is it fulfilling you in the way that I imagine it's?
It's the best job I could possibly have.
Okay.
I can't imagine a better job than this. You know.
Did you feel that even in the early parts of doing this, even through the self-doubt, and did it feel right for you?
Yes, it felt right, and it was scary. Like I knew that this is what I wanted to be doing, that this is what I had to be doing. And I wasn't sure if I could make a living at it. So there was both, you know. Like, yes, I have to be doing this, and what if I can't be doing this? Yeah, I mean, you have these amazing interactions with people on a regular basis. And each client it's only for an hour, or sometimes an hour and a half. And you get to create your own schedule, and it's the most meaningful work. For me. Yeah.
Along those lines, have you ever experienced any type of burnout or kind of uninspired moments, and what have you done? And in context of like on the macro scale, but what, or have you had that with individual clients as well, where maybe they were starting to bore you or it was not a good fit?
I haven't experienced burnout in the work itself. I have gone through periods where I've found myself griping more about it, or griping about clients leaving, where suddenly my income is a lot lower, and I'm thinking, well, I'm depending on my clients here, and I need to check that out for myself. But I definitely get bored sometimes in my sessions, and sometimes the work is not so alive, and sometimes the connection is not so amazing. And sometimes the resistance is so heavy, or there's such deadness that it can be overwhelming. And that's hard. And that's where I know that I'm missing something and I need some extra consultation. Because if I'm bored, I'm probably not doing the best work I can be doing. So I need some help. And then sometimes the clinical relationship ends and it's okay, you know? You're not going to be the right fit for everybody. But as a whole, I don't get burnt out. I used to be a social worker and I was burnt out for years. This is much different, you know?
Does your social life overlap with any of your clients? Meaning, do you bump into them, or what do you do when? That's one.
I bumped into one in Whole Foods one time, and I was delighted to see him. Yeah. And back when there were video stores, I bumped into a couple in a video store, and I was totally delighted to see them, and they were to me too. And if I think I am going to bump into them, like if they say something and I think, well, you live right around the corner, I might say, you know, we might run into each other. And how would that be for you? And how would it be for you if I simply acknowledged you but didn't come over and say hello? Because I might be in a funk. I might not feel social, but I would love to at least connect eye contact-wise with you. So it'll happen. It's never, so far it hasn't been uncomfortable. But I know it could be if you're in a dance community or in something more intimate.
I'm thinking 12-step.
Oh, yeah. That would be very intimate.
Yeah. Do you leave the room? Let them have the experience.
Does it happen to you?
Well, right now I'm a hairdresser, so I overlap in so many ways with so many of my clients. I see them all over the city, in the rooms, everywhere. So that's okay for me right now. even though hairdresser, therapist, there's like a fine line, I feel like I know a lot of stuff. And then when I see them in the rooms, I know more. And I also don't want my own shit in the rooms when they're there, I think. But I'm not sure.
It's up to you. If I were in a 12-step meeting and one of my clients came in, I would not want them knowing about me in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd leave, and then I'd bring it up with them.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's up to you, though. I don't think there's a rule about that, but protect yourself and do what feels right, too.
Did you ever find it challenging, or do you, to do this kind of work? And it's also how it provides a living for you, so it's really intimate, and the truth is that each person represents a dollar amount, and you paying your bills and paying your rent. Did you ever or do you kind of wrestle with that?
Not so much anymore, but for sure. Not sure what I can say about that. I think the more I felt like I was really getting good at this and seeing what I was doing reflected in people I was seeing, and then also knowing how I worked my ass off to get here and how much money it takes, and how much money it still takes for my own work, for my consultation, to rent my office for over $1,000 a month. You know, it's up there, and so your overhead is huge. And I imagine you're going to try your ass off. You're going to give it all. And so when you think of it like that, it's a pretty good deal. And with certain people, you're probably going to feel like you're not making enough. Is that helpful?
Is it tacky to do like a package type deal where, I mean, I sometimes think, because I actually run a support group at my shop, and a lot of the girls will pay like the 3 months just up front instead of session by session. So then I feel more secure. I mean, I'm always glad that they do that, because then I know for the next 3 months I have income. But is that something a individual therapist would do?
I wouldn't call it a package deal.
Right. Yeah.
I have many clients who pay me a month in advance, and that way they don't have to deal with money,
Right.
which is interesting
Yeah.
in itself. But beyond a month, no one else has paid me for, say, 2 months or 3 months. If they wanted to, great. I mean, if they were certain they were going to be in there that long, that's a great commitment. And then if they left early, you'd have to give them the money back. Which would be kind of strange. I've never done that. Yeah.
Do you have any particular therapeutic modalities you've specialized in, and are there things, aspects of those modalities that your trainees are attracted to you for?
I have a feeling that my trainees don't know what kind of modality I come from. And honestly, what I'm most attracted to now, and I wouldn't say I am a psychoanalyst at all, but I'm really interested in a psychoanalytic way of working. But very relational, and a much more soft-core approach. It's not orthodox at all. And then a lot of my work is, I guess you'd call it existential. It's based on we all have a choice in every moment, even when we don't think we have one. But I love the unconscious, and the more I'm learning about it, the more fascinating it is. I'm getting a lot more symbolic in the way I conceptualize predicaments and people and what we're saying and what we're meaning. And again, always in a relational context.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming.